can do it. Change, change. It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do change. Change.
Good afternoon and welcome to Spirit Cafe. I'm Barbara Schreiner Trudell and I'm here with my co-host Cheryl Rogers, and we are going to be talking about the Royals today. How exciting is that? Well, let us begin first with our land acknowledgement. We work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many First Nations. And as we gather from these numerous places on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, including the Métis, Inuit, and all other Indigenous people. Also acknowledging that as we continue to grow and expand on these lands, there is still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination toward our BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus family. And by making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. For we are one. All right, Miss Cheryl, we are talking about who gives a royal. Well, and a little bit about the judgment that tends to be around the royal family and stuff. So how about you kick us off with some of the things that we were chatting about in the back before we came on?
Well, we started talking just before the show, like we always do, and it's just amazing the things that come up when we have this conversation. Because believe it or not, Barbara and I don't always agree, and isn't that wonderful? Right? I love it because it really enables us to have these fabulous conversations and to be able to say, okay, let me think about that. Let's look at that from that perspective. Just being so open to hearing and taking into consideration what each one of us is saying, which I so love. I mean, that's one of the things that just really knits us together.
I think so. I like that because I think we can choose to disagree and still love and respect one another, appreciate one another. So anyway, let's talk about the royals because I think the royal family is a waste of time, money, and energy. So I don't have much faith in King Charles, but that's my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that a lot of people do. It's interesting because before we came on, I spoke to Alexa. And I asked Alexa, how many people in Britain support the royal family or the monarchy? I said the monarchy. And she said 48% support them, 28% are not sure, and 25% don't. So I said, okay, so how many people in Canada support the monarchy? And she said a quarter want to keep it, and a quarter are unsure. So it's very interesting, there's so many different perspectives and ways of thinking about the monarchy. And one of the things that I've been looking at and thinking about just over the years is how we make our judgments and how we make our opinions from our perceptions. And our perception can be from coming from a place of only knowing so much. And even though we may only know so much, I don't think we can always know everything. However, I think taking into consideration and having these conversations and bringing out some thoughts about it in different ways, I think is very healthy. And so, one of the things for me that I think about is that the royal family really believes that they're here to serve. That's what they say. I know that, for me, the Queen Elizabeth, she was an epitome of that. And I think she was an absolutely marvelous woman. And when I think about the history that has come up through that firm, that academy, the business, family, whatever you want to call it, people have different names for it. She grew up only knowing what she learned.
Exactly.
And I think that even though that happened and that there were so many things that were forbidden, let's say, she realized that there were things that needed to change as time changed. And I really believe that Charles gets that too. It's funny because I looked at the whole thing. I didn't wake up at 4 a.m, but I did watch some of it later in the day, and I sped through some of it. But this whole regalia, I mean, it's almost like a movie, like it's not real, if you know what I mean. Having the crowns and these robes and all that kind of thing. And then again, that is their history, that is their family, that is their tradition. And for us looking in, it can seem absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I have, a comment about the whole production,
Mhm.
and that is the cost of it
Yes.
and how much poverty there probably is
Mhm.
in the UK at this point in time.
Mhm.
And is that really a good use of resources when so many people are struggling?
Mhm. I agree. Yeah, I do. I agree. And again, I don't know the answer. My devil's advocate voice comes in, and this is just because I really am so aware of needing to look at all sides if possible, and if not, at least two sides. And the people, it brought the people together. It is so uniting in a
Mhm.
way. When you see how many people were there, what I really appreciated as well is how multicultural, diverse, inclusive, all those things um, were in this coronation that were never there before.
Right.
Things like as well the aristocrats. They weren't. There were a lot of them that were not invited, that were always there before, to
Mhm.
make space for this inclusive, diverse, um, um, cultural, multicultural event. So it's things like that. It's things like the fact that only working royals are now included in standing on the balcony and doing anything. In fact, only the working royals will be acknowledged, and we'll see actually in the media and things like that. So I think there's a lot of change that is going on, and I do wonder, that often we say we want something a certain way, but what would happen if just like that it was gone? What would be the ripple effect of that?
Well, I think, like anything, the minute you make a drastic change to any system, it's going to throw things into chaos, which we saw, in Russia and in Germany, as communism was quashed, there was immense change that was deeply painful for
Mhm.
all of the people, I think anytime we create something that makes a big shift, a quantum leap or an expansion that was unexpected, I think we begin to see all structures begin to crumble until they're rebuilt.
Mhm.
And hopefully the rebuilding happens in a different fashion
Mhm.
than the original structure, but that's not always the case.
Mhm.
And I think there's plenty to be said for the way we could do things differently. And I think about things like poverty and the number of people in our communities who do not have their basic needs met.
Mhm.
And when I look at government, or in this case, the monarchy, spending probably multiple millions
Mhm.
of dollars. Yes, for those who appreciate it, I think there's a benefit. But for those who are opposed to it,
Mhm.
there's multiple conversations could be had
Yeah.
about how we do things. And I think back to um, Manitoba here, where the Trudeau government of the 70s and the NDP government that was in blah, 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 in
Mhm.
Manitoba at the time, they
Mhm.
created a poverty-free zone in Dauphin, Manitoba, and they held that for 5 years. And the impact on that community was so incredible. It was so powerful, so life-affirming, and everything about it was positive. And when government changed, of course, it got quashed. And I think if we were to look back on that and then begin to restructure some things to actually look after the people that we serve, I think we would begin to see some really positive
I agree.
changes.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, if that's the one you were talking about where everybody was given an income, no matter what their station in life. And how it played out was everybody started working, they had jobs, the economy started going well because people felt valued, they
Yeah.
felt part of something, right? And I don't understand why the powers that be keep squashing these things that work and doing such, I don't even know what the word is,
See,
other things. I like what Fiona said. I just want to read. She
yeah.
says a new infrastructure has to be ready to be implemented, such as royal services funds becoming social services. And I agree that absolutely needs to be there. I also when we talk about that, I was saying to Barbara, I didn't know much about this until probably a year or two ago, but Charles, when he was a prince, he started the Prince's Trust. And that was about 50 years ago. And all his whole salary from his time, I believe, in the Navy when he served in the forces, went into this Prince's Trust. He created it. And today it is still running. And I believe it has I heard billions created billions of dollars out there for education, for entrepreneurship, for small business. And it started in the UK, but it's actually become more global. And I know that there are some youth in Canada who have benefited from that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and here again, how much do we know about what is being done and what isn't? I don't know. And there's no right or wrong. All I'm saying is, let's have these conversations and let's think about it more and let's be more curious.
Well, and when we look back at what Princess Diana did, she was really a conduit of love
Mhm.
that traveled the globe and made such a deep impact on everybody. I can't think of anybody. I'm sure there are some people, but I can't really think of people off the top of my mind who would be opposed to Princess Diana and what she did while she was here. And when I think about King Charles, I don't get the warm fuzzy from him, but I wonder what would happen when Prince William takes the
Mm-hmm.
throne.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, for me, that feels like it would be more positive. And I don't know that for sure, but
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like that he would be a force for change.
Yeah.
And our world needs it right now, I believe.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think that's where um, for me, I think about not losing hope and not losing sight of the good that can be done by these people because of their profile, because
Exactly.
of, who they are. Um, but going back to that, we started talking about Diana, right? And oh my gosh, can you imagine if Diana was queen? Uh, yeah, I know. But you see, look at us. We could accept her as queen, like, oh wow, right? But because
And
it's not Diana, we can't accept it. But
yeah,
it makes me think too, of her parenting style and what a great job she did with those kids. She used to take William. She used to wake him up early in the morning and take him to a shelter where he would serve the needy breakfast or meals. I don't know, and things like that. She would. I think she took them to McDonald's. But the point is, she wanted them to see the other side. She wanted them to experience that as well, right? I think they went to hospitals, to give toys to kids and things like that. So there again, there's a shift happening there, right? That's created something different. Um, the other thing I think about is poor Harry. I think, poor Harry, honestly, I think he gets, I'm not mad about what they're doing now, him and Meghan. I think Meghan has too much stuff going into his ear and is really taking advantage. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, and that's okay. But something he said, and I can really appreciate and understand is, how can he be happy about Queen Camilla, or even her being his father's wife, when
yeah,
she was the cause, and not directly, I'm not pointing a finger at her, because she suffered just as much, right? Can you
yeah,
imagine being in love with someone and this whole scenario is going on?
yeah.
We need to sometimes think about that, put ourselves in their shoes. But he did see what his mother went through, and he did experience his mother's pain and suffering, and because of this love relationship between Charles and Camilla. So for anybody to expect him just to embrace her and be, all, yeah, I think would be really unrealistic. And people don't talk about that. It's like, oh, I don't know, get over it or whatever.
And I don't think we get over things like that very easily.
Yeah.
No, it's like dad betrayed mom. I'm sorry. Dad is now, put in the back seat, and the person that he betrayed her with, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, it takes us to the idea of forgiveness, and that one, we do have judgment about how people behave, rightly or wrongly, and then of course we turn around and the idea of forgiveness is always a bit of a challenging one, because there's certain things we really sit back and go, I'm not prepared to forgive.
Mhm.
And, that's probably because we haven't understood forgiveness. Forgiveness is really about, freeing myself from the
Mhm.
past. It's not about anybody else. It's not
Mhm.
for anybody else. It's for myself. But, it's one of those challenging things that would be a little hard
Mhm.
to accept, for sure.
I think that the fact that he was there, I think really does show respect for his family. Doesn't matter what capacity, the fact that he went,
I agree.
I don't think it would have been in good form for Meghan to go, quite honestly. So I
Yeah.
think the way it turned out was perfect. but he could have not gone at all. And then that would have been cutting himself off. But his being there shows that he doesn't want to cut himself off from his family. He's okay, or seems to be, sitting with his cousins, not being one of the working royals, which, like you said, what is his book called? Oh gosh.
Oh, I was just looking at it.
Oh, it's gone out of my mind. But I really understood afterwards why he named it that. I'm going to look it up. Hang on.
Yeah, good. Spare.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Spare, right? Feeling like a spare part, like a spare,
Yeah.
right? Because, yeah, I don't know. It's like, okay, we need an heir. And then in case the heir dies, maybe we'll have a spare.
Spare parts, just like changing your tires, or you got a spare in the trunk just in case. Yeah.
Yeah. So put some comments in the chat. Let us know, your thoughts and feelings about all this.
Spare air, said Fiona. Oh, we shouldn't be laughing, but it is kind of funny. That was great, Fiona. I love that. Oh my goodness. But, it's the idea of, even judging, whether we judge it good or bad. I think the whole model of judgment is such a falsehood, because we don't know. And we can't know anybody else's experience, because we're only coming from inside our own heads. And so, most often we don't even know who we are truly. So that idea that somehow I know who you are, and so I can tell you this is bad or that is wrong. What I know about love is it's something that happens, and to deem it as bad and wrong, I think I just can't go there. I really can't. And if Charles loved Camilla, but because of the structure of the monarchy, had to marry somebody, it's like, I don't,
Yeah.
it was an uncomfortable situation all the way around. And who am I to judge who someone loves? I don't think I have that right.
Yeah.
And, I've been in love. I am in love. So it's like, bad, right?
Where'd you go?
I disappeared.
It's good to hear you're still in love. But yes, you're right. We can't, unless we really have been through what some of these people have experienced, we cannot relate. I have to be honest. I have always been fascinated by their whole history and the experience, and I go back to thinking about Margaret, Queen Elizabeth's sister, and she was so in love with a guy who truly loved her but was married. Okay, and so Queen Elizabeth shipped him off somewhere to another. He served in some way, but shipped him off to another country, right? Yeah. To separate them. And quite honestly, I really think that was devastating for Margaret. I think that was a big part of who she became and how she lived her life. But the thing about that is I look at these things and I think, oh my God, Queen Elizabeth did a lot of damage in that way, in relationships and things. Edward, on his, the king that abdicated, on his dying bed, begged her. She actually went to see him when he was dying. I think it was the only time she went to see him. Begged her to give his wife the HRH title. And she said no, which I can understand at that time. And so my whole point about it is that she believed what she was doing at the time was correct.
Yeah.
However, as the years went on, look at how suddenly, they had to divorce Charles and Diana. So divorce became a thing. Then Camilla divorced, and then, Charles loved her so much, we had to allow divorce people to marry. So things changed, right? There has been a lot of change over the years, and a lot of shifting, I think, into the future, when I believe she saw the need because of the people's belief, right? Not just for her family, but for where society was, and needing to make some changes around that. When Diana died, how many people judged her, and she was with her grandchildren trying to comfort them, but they judged her for not coming out into the public.
I think that's probably my least favorite thing about the monarchy is the illusion that they present that all is well. They're not behaving like real human beings, and they hide what they feel, what they think, and that to me is a disservice to the people they serve. Because if you're setting yourself up to try to be perfect, the people around you are going to feel less than. Like there's something about that that's just wrong. And what I love in society today is we're starting to, air the dirty laundries, shall we say. We're starting to get real. And I think that to me is, really where we need to go. And I think that's where the monarchy needs to go as well, is to sit back and cry in public if that's what they feel, or to discuss, the things that have been a challenge for them. It's got to be hard to live that life.
Yeah.
To put that mask on.
Yeah.
And to consider how many years Queen Elizabeth did that.
Yeah.
Being that perfect. For me, it's such a falsehood.
Yeah.
And I don't love it.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. And so at this time, it's a good time to take a break. And how do you say it, Barbara?
You're watching Spirit Cafe here on New Thought Media Network, and don't go away. We will be right back.
Time for a royal veil to be gently lifted. Love it.
Happy birthday, Camp Cedar Ridge. We invite you to come camp and celebrate our first year while in sacred service. May 19th through the 21st, we'll be restoring our beloved meditation labyrinth. Come camp with us for the weekend, and all we'll ask you to cover are the meals. Vegetarian, vegan, and gluten-free options are available. That's the weekend of Friday, May 19th to Sunday, May 21st. You can bring your own tent or act fast and register for one of our glamping tents or bunkhouse beds while supplies last. We do have limited indoor accommodations for an additional fee. Find more details and registration at campcedarridgeor.org/lab.
And we are back with more royalty.
So let's move
Oh.
on to Canada, right? And Canada is Canada's what do you call it, role or association with the monarchy. Now, for me, I don't think that, having these Commonwealth countries any longer serves any value.
I don't either.
For me, the British want this, and it's their history and it's their lineage and all the rest of it. And that's fine. I think that's great, if that's what they want. And, why do we need to still bow to the king?
Well, I can assure you I won't be doing that. Plus, I look at when I look at the situations in the world today. I mean, we did the land acknowledgement at the beginning, and when I think about that land acknowledgement, I also think about the fact that because of how the English went around and colonized the world, that they have created this false perception that white Christian English is correct and the best. And that is such bullshit.
I agree. I do agree. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
That
It needs to change, yeah.
Yeah, and as long as we are looking to the monarchy as some kind of figurehead of state, I think we are perpetuating that continued lie. And it is. And for me, that's probably the biggest issue I have with the whole monarchy and what has happened historically. And what has happened, and now we're creating a new reality. And when we come to understand that, first off, there is only one race of people, and it's called the human race. And that this idea of color and stuff is all about a caste system that has separated everybody, going, here's what's best and here's what's worst, and all of it's a lie. And that is a lie that is continuing to harm the majority of the people, because when we look at the world today, there are more people of color than there are white. There are more religions, such as Muslim, that are greater and have much greater following than Christianity. And there are many more languages than English. And so I think, when we look at all of those things, and this is where I get a little excited. I just, it's something that I want to see change. I want to see us begin to love one another and respect one another and discover each other.
Yeah.
Have conversations to get to know what somebody else believes or thinks, and to value the opinions of others rather than to go, I'm right and you're wrong.
And that's exactly what this show is about, right? Is being able to have these conversations and spark some thought and discussion, and shifting around, being closed and being more open and creating a new reality. I do think, it's going to take time. And one of the things that I do want to say is it wasn't only the British. It was the Belgians, it was the French, it was the Spanish. I mean, and these are the things that we also forget, right? We always blame the British. But I'm not blaming them for anything. The whole point, though, for me is, we spoke about this earlier, and one of the thoughts that I had was, do we not like Germans? Do we not respect Germans because of what Hitler did? Right? And so, again, it's like, do we suffer the sins of the father? How long do we do that for? Not just the British, but all of us, how long do we, yeah.
That definitely brings up a good question. And I don't have anything against the British.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's the monarchy,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little bit of a different story. And then, when we look at and I mean, there are many, many countries in the world that have been very destructive to humanity. And so I think when we take a look at the world, we can, go back, whether it's Hitler or Pol Pot or whoever it is in the world, or right now, Putin, whatever's going on in the world where we are trying to create separation, where we are instilling fear. We could go to the media and go, you are the biggest perpetrators of fear in our world today. And I think when we start to dismantle some of these things and begin to explore our own biases,
Yes.
because we all have them. We all have them. And when we start to think, well, I've got it all together and you don't, that's when we've really missed the boat. And I think that's one of my fears is, how do we remain open and respectful, and at the same time, discerning enough to actually look at different sides of any equation, because there's so much to consider and there is no right answer.
Exactly. Yeah. And so really what I think it comes back to is working on the individual self.
Yes.
And if we are able to do that, exactly what you are saying, if we were able to be more discerning, less judgmental, look at our own biases, if we were able to do that and start living from the inside out, taking all those things into consideration, one person at a time, that's how we do that. And I do believe that a lot of us are in the process
Yes.
of that journey, right? I think it's going to take a while, but who knows? There was a time, there was a book called The Tipping Point, right? That at some point there's only this many people that are needed to tip the scales. But yeah, it is interesting, and the media, I don't know why people still watch. I don't know why they allow themselves to be manipulated, and just, they have no idea. This morning a friend of mine sent me something. People have no idea what's going on in South Africa. They think of South Africa, they think of the Truth and Reconciliation process and how marvelous and how wonderful. Well, it was marvelous and wonderful. And if Nelson Mandela was young enough or could have stuck around enough to be in power, it could have been a truly wonderful country. She sent me this morning, absolutely devastated. She says, not only tragic, but outrageous. Yet another world-renowned facility bites the dust, along with Eskom, which is our electricity system, and many others under this diabolical government. Livestock crisis, horses dropping dead as government fumble vaccine production at crumbling Onderstepoort biological products. This was a world-renowned organization, and it's they don't have a postal service now. I spoke to my mother this morning. She hasn't had electricity for 60 hours. This is ongoing, and they're going into winter. And I think to myself, I never hear anything about it. I never see anything about that, right? How this government has sucked dry this country, and how the people are suffering, not whites, everybody. Everybody. Whites, there's now reverse discrimination. There's no doubt about it. A white person cannot get a job. unless you know somebody or you have your own business. Yeah, it has melted down now. It's not on the verge any longer. It's melted down. I mean, that was in
think
what was 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think
So
it's
the media they only put in front of us, I think, what the powers that be direct them to.
well, and so I wonder, because South Africa is predominantly a black country,
Mhm.
so we don't care about that. We care
Maybe.
about Ukraine because it's a predominantly white country. But I'm sorry. I think sometimes that is a little bit of what's going on. If it isn't impacting white people predominantly,
Mhm.
then it's irrelevant to those of us in North America or wherever. I and you know that I mean, that is a generality that probably, some people would disagree with. But when I look at the media and I look at the stories that are presented and the way that they are presented, if you watch CBC and you watch Fox News and you watch the BBC, you're getting very different
Yeah.
focuses on the same piece of news. So where's the truth?
Mhm.
I
And
sometimes think the
yeah.
comedy networks do better.
And what I think is South Africa is not a threat. That's why they don't
Not a
even look at
threat.
it. Russia is a
Russia
threat,
is a threat. Yeah, I agree.
right? And
Yeah.
Russia and the Chinese have
Mhm.
infiltrated Africa.
Mhm.
Infiltrated. People have no idea about that. The Russians gave, they gave AK-47s and weapons and all kinds of things. Chinese lending money and building things, which I don't know where they are anymore, but anything that's been built has been destroyed. It just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. But you know what gives me hope?
Hmm.
We spoke about this. Yeah, I agree, Fiona.
I agree as well.
Racism is I don't know how you say that, bete noir, and our greatest modern challenge of the planet. It is, and you know what the thing about it is I really don't think we can paint the picture with one brush. The racism that we experience in North America is very different to racism in Africa or in any other country. And I think that's another thing that we don't really understand and look at. And the cultures, I think in South Africa, there's a big cultural influence that just, when you have a country that has 11 official languages, 11,
Wow.
right? And that's so that the other tribes could feel included when this was all constructed. And then you have the languages that are not official. I think it's a lot more complex, quite honestly. But
Yep.
what I thought about yesterday, interestingly enough, I only thought about because I watched the series on Netflix called Transatlantic, which is very good. I think it's a 5-part series. It's based on truth. So if anybody's interested in that, it's very good. About Marseille and the people in Marseille who tried to help many Jews get out of the country. And I never realized just how much the French were against the Jews. But anyway, the point here for me is I looked at that and I thought to myself, okay, so the war was in the late 30s, early 40s. And look at the world today, how it rebuilt. Look at Germany today, look at Europe. So that's in our lifetime. And that gives me hope.
Mm.
Right? Can be done.
Yeah, I think it can be too. I think that it's so important for us to sort of do some inner reflection Where do we hold judgment? Where are we creating separation? Where is it? What is it that we really fear? And are we allowing that fear to run our lives, or are we exploring it and trying to find the root as to why it is that we fear what we fear? Because so often the fear that we are experiencing is really false. It is a fabricated imagination story that we've come up with that has teeth. It
Yeah.
feels like it's real. And I think, shifting that somehow is going to be crucial for us to begin to, tame this beast that is racism wherever it shows up.
Yeah. Racism, culturalism, the religious,
Oh, yes.
right? Religious wars. I mean, these are. It's again, it's complex. We look at it. I'm sorry, but I'm thinking of the Canadian health system right now. We look at one thing instead of looking at the whole body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we try and diagnose and treat that one thing. Well, if we don't look at the whole body, what good is that going to do?
Exactly. That'd be like diagnosing my hand, but forgetting my heart, lung, kidneys, liver, uh, stomach, right? Like just, none of that matters. The hand, that's,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of how we look at the world. That's how we look at the issues that we're faced with. So it's really time for us to begin exploring, number one, what we believe internally, and to take it apart, not just accept it as gospel, but take it apart and then begin to look at the world and go, how can I view it differently? Like, even look at how people feel about poverty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're poor, let me just stay away from you. You're a little scary. If you're ill, oh, yeah, get away. If you're like, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's like coming to a place of realizing that we're all here having a life journey, and it is what it is. And each moment it's changing, and we might judge something today and then experience it tomorrow.
Well, I honestly believe that never say never.
Never say never. Yeah, I've done that. I did that when my youngest son was born. I'm never having any more kids. Yeah, never say never.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many years later, I had one more.
Yeah. And I really think that as a human race, as human beings, why is it we need to really look at why do we need to be right?
Oh,
What does that do for us? Why? Why can't we just be in the question? Why can't we
no.
just be curious and not accepting of the atrocities, but accepting of people's belief systems, accepting of people's different way of living or lives? Why do we have to, I don't know, have this answer, right? Somebody who was where I don't know where I was. I heard it in the last week or so that some cultures don't have the word why in their
Oh,
vocabulary.
oh, that's cool.
Yes, but what they do have is what. So instead of asking why, look at what is happening and what can I do about it.
That's cool. That's cool. I was listening to a podcast this morning when I was out for my walk. Jay Shetty was interviewing, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was talking about discipline. And the idea of discipline and what it adds to us, and yet the ways in which we go, no, no, don't make me do that, right? Like, and yet it's such an important aspect if we want to create a healthy, happy, harmonious life. Discipline is actually a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever we're doing, and even as we look at the world around us and what's happening in the world around us, it's like, can we begin to be present in the moment and learn how to appreciate what is
Mhm.
rather than avoiding it? You know, when you think back to COVID, the lockdown period, especially those first 3 months, where people were wanting it to be over and getting rid of it and hated it and all of this. But in retrospect, when we look back at it, we can go, wow, like nature flourished and animal
Mhm.
life flourished, and we could drive without any traffic, which is phenomenal for Toronto. Um, so we can look back and go, wow, oh, and I got this break. And yet, if you were listening to people a week before the COVID
Mhm.
lockdown, going, oh, what I wouldn't give for a vacation, and I'm so tired, and there's so many demands on me, and if I could just get a rest. Well, here you are. And then we
Mhm.
complain about that. So I think we have some confusion.
Well, I do believe that this journey in this on this planet in this dimension
At this time.
this time, yes, that this is a world of duality that we have created to come and experience.
Yes.
And so there's always going to be the dual sides. Like discipline is good, but discipline can also be not so good. It can be used to do harm. uh,
Yeah.
and that's with everything in our world today, right? And so it's learning to embrace it all. I think for me, it's to step back and to observe and not be so critical and judgmental, because it is what it is, and our collective consciousness have created it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, because if we could, number one, love ourselves enough to stop judging ourselves and criticizing ourselves, um, if we could love life enough to be with it rather than in opposition to it, I think we could begin to create a world that actually works for the highest and best expression of all.
Yeah,
And we're a little ways away from that still.
yeah.
But I'm
But
gonna keep dreaming about it.
exactly. And that's the whole point. As long as we keep talking about it, as long as we keep experiencing it ourselves,
Yeah,
right? Going within. And I think, we in New Thought, we really believe that the answer is not out there, it's in here,
it's in here.
right?
It's in that place of creation, that place of
Mhm.
possibility, because out here's already been done. It's been created, that's why we can see it. The
Exactly.
the answers we're seeking
Mhm.
are deep at the depth of our own beingness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, whole new world order coming via
Yes.
Spirit
Yes.
Cafe.
Yes. And you made a comment earlier which made me think about South Africa as well, when I said to you, what if it disappeared like that? And you said everything needs to crumble and collapse before we rebuild. And the reason I bring that up now is that um, I think we need to appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's such a resistance to change.
Mhm.
Like, people will say, "Oh, I'm in my comfort zone." No, you're not. You're in your
Mhm.
uncomfortable zone.
Mhm.
You're in
Mhm.
your familiar place. I
Mhm.
always like to change the comfort zone to the familiar place,
Mhm.
because it's familiar, it can be painful, and yet we will tolerate it rather than the unknown that we could step into. And so
Yes.
I think, this spiritual journey is about tapping the unknown,
Yes. Yes.
finding within ourselves that spark that
Mhm.
creates life and gives life,
Mhm.
and that's what excites and delights me. And
Mhm.
still I live in my familiar place, but
We all do. And as long as I think we are just challenging ourselves and keep challenging ourselves that little bit more each day, right? We're expanding that awareness, expanding that consciousness. And if we
Yeah.
can just keep doing that, right?
Yeah, my son shared a video with me, and I can't remember the name of the person who created the video, but it's 1% better every day. And if we did one little tiny thing better every day, we would actually accomplish momentous
Yeah.
things in our lives.
Yeah.
1%. And there isn't a one of us that couldn't do 1% better.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Like
I love
that's,
it.
yeah, I wish I could remember the name of it, but of the video, but he shared in there about the British cycling team and how, they hired this new coach or whatever. And he said, okay, I want you to do, just a little bit. So he did things like, say, okay, get better pillows and take them with you on the road. Improve the bikes a little bit better. And he said, if you do all of these little weeny teeny things, then in 5 years, we'd be able to win the Tour de France. And what ended up happening was in 2 years, they actually won. So it's like that idea of 1% better. And all of us can do one little thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where we're going to see some pretty mighty change. So final thoughts, my darling, on the monarchy or on whatever, final thoughts.
For me, it's stay in the question, be curious, be open, to listening, to hearing, and to speaking. I think if we are in fear and we don't feel we have a voice, it doesn't do humanity any good. I think it's really just about being in that question, staying curious, and having the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And that's kind of what this is all about. So I love that we're doing this. Yeah, and for me, it's really about exploring what's inside my own mind, my own heart. I remember reading that, most of us use about 5% of our conscious abilities. So that means 95% is coming from the subconscious, subjective part of our lives, which was created between 0 and 6, which we don't even know what it is, and yet it's running the show. And I think the more conscious we can become, the more willing we become to let go of the old paradigms and to open our minds and hearts to greater and bigger ideas. I think that's where freedom lies. And I think that's how we create a world that works for the highest and best good for all of humanity. I think we are on the precipice of something truly, truly spectacular. And are we ready to take the leap?
Beautiful.
Well, everybody, I hope you had fun today. I know I did. You, Cheryl, you have a good time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? Choose to disagree with somebody you love, but do it in a way that respects their opinion and they respect yours. And by doing that, we create greater harmony, peace, love, and joy in our world. And that is the solution to many of the world's problems, I think, is just being with one another with a loving, open heart. Have a beautiful week. Love you all. We'll be back again next Wednesday at noon Eastern time. So whether you're here the morning, the afternoon, or the evening, we love you. We appreciate you. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time. Bye for now.
It's a sure thing. Change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at